welcome back to another watch list. What used to be my weekly look at films, but is now, since I'm back at work, turned into something a bit less regular. Not that I've been watching any less films or otherwise, but finding the time and the energy to record has been somewhat of a struggle for the past week. But I've watched so many amazing films that I couldn't wait to get on here and tell you about them. First one I'm going to start with is a British film, and it's a British film from a well-known pair, a famous pair, from a short story by the writer Graham Greene, and also directed by Carol Reed. It is not The Third Man, but it is Fallen Idol, part of the Vintage Classics release by Studio Canal. And Fallen Idol tells the story of a young boy who lives in the French consulate, and his father is the consulate general, I suppose, and he at the start leaves to go and get his mother. His mother has not been around for a long time. He's going to pick her up and bring her back home, wonder if she'll recognise. But that's all to the backdrop of what is the main story, because the house is run by a male and a female husband and wife couple who look after Phil and tend to his ever-growing needs. They're very much the butler and the housemaid of the house. They get the running of the house going forward, and there is no doubt that the boy idolises the male part of the partnership, so to speak. He just thinks he's great. He just is a person that gives him time, gives him energy, and gives him what he probably needs, which is attention. So he promises to play with him in the afternoon after he's had dinner. If he's good, he does that. Whereas the female is very much the authoritarian figure. In the absence of a mother, she is the one that disciplines him and basically says you're being too easy on him. And Fallen Idol tells the story of how his perception of the male character is challenged by some events that happen. He's just a man. He's makes mistakes. He is maybe not the hero that he thought he once was, and the boy and the husband and wife get embroiled in what is a bit of a mystery. That sets the scene for the Fallen Idol. It's very much a film about adulation. It's a film with a mystery to solve, and it's a film of, well, quite a lot of people that were somewhat famous later on in years. It's a good movie. I mean, if you like British cinema in and of around that time, which this one's from 1948, I suspect that you will like Fallen Idol. It's a pretty good example of one of those movies, and given it's, produced, directed by Carol Reed, the kind of standard that you're going to get. I think it's great print that they've put together, and as I usually say, I just find it stunning that we get films like this in the quality that we do on such a regular basis to be able to watch and enjoy. Great stuff. Next up is a film that I watched on streaming. I've got a trial to one of those movie services, which I may do a video on as to the fors and against it. But I watched an Olivier Assayas movie, and it's only the second one that I've ever watched of his. The first one being Cold Water, which I thought was okay. And this is The Clouds of Seedless Maria. And it stars primarily in the main role Juliette Binoche, who is just this fabulous actress who is quite brilliant in even very average movies. And she stars as a former theatre star, well, former and current, because she had great success when she was younger, and she's been living on the coattails of that to some sort of extent, but has built up a very famous following for herself. And she's assisted by Kristen Stewart, who is her personal assistant, who seems to be a bit more than a personal assistant. She lives with her, she goes with her everywhere, and in this case goes to Seedless Maria, which is a mountainside retreat, while they go to prepare for Juliette Binoche's character to star in a retelling of one of the plays that made her famous. And it's a play that was written by somebody who became a close friend of hers that at the very start of the movie is announced has just died. And this causes a very emotional toll on her, because she's caught up about the fact that this person has died and is going to leave a hole in her life. But at the same stage, a new, vibrant new director is coming along and he wants to shoot the play again. Except when she was young, she played the younger role, but in this retelling, she's to play one of the older characters. And it turns out that in the play, these two characters have a relationship. And the new director is fascinated by the insight that somebody who put so much of their life into playing the younger character would be playing the older character, given that they're both in a relationship. And she's very confused. She doesn't really want to do it because it both betrays her memories of the writer-director who brought her so much happiness, and she has very fond memories of. And the fact that she wants to do a good job and does not, sees herself very much as the younger character still, like a lot of us do. And I think as we grow older, it's hard not to see ourselves as 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds, whatever it is, the age that you identify with being young. And it's only as we get older we are forced to accept maybe the differences of ourselves now, and that primarily is what the movie is about. There are some other people that are in the movie, but they're very much side characters. It's quite a famous cast in a lot of ways, but the film is very much about Juliette Binoche's character coming to terms with who she is as a person now, understanding within society and how she sees herself. And I actually think it's a really nice companion piece to something like Let the Sunshine In, if you've seen that, where she has similar but more evocative responses to that same question. And I just thought Clouds of Santa Maria was absolutely beautiful. It's beautifully shot, it's beautifully written. It feels like there's hardly a wasted line of dialogue. There's even scenes where they're acting out the dialogue of the play, Kristen Stewart and Juliette Binoche, but it is not informed that that is what they're doing. You're not sure whether it's scenes from the play or whether they're having a conversation about life in general, and it's only revealed maybe a couple of minutes into the scene as to which one it is, either way. And I really like those pieces as well. So I've been on a little let's hunt out Olivier Assayas movies for the past couple of days, and I've got a couple more coming in the mail. I've actually got a couple downstairs, so I'll have to start working my way through it because I did dearly love that film. Next one that I watched was what was the first for me? I never watched a Pedro Almodovar movie before. I've seen bits of ones before, I've seen bits of Volver, for instance, and lots of people talk, and there's lots of his films in the Criterion collection, for instance, but I had never seen one fully from start to finish, or at least not been cognizant that it was a Almodovar movie as I was watching it. And I watched Live Flesh. I assume it's Live Flesh, not Live Flesh, but Live Flesh. Live Flesh tells the story at the start of a young man, Victor, who is inexperienced. He has a one-night stand with a lady, and he goes to seek her out. He seeks her out to rekindle that one night of passion that he had, and he's very attractive. But in doing so, a gunshot is fired off, and the police are called. And the police are called at the time, and he panics and he grabs the gun and holds the lady hostage. And in the ensuing struggle, one of the police officers shot in the leg. Fast forward a number of years, Victor's in jail, and the policeman, played by a rather younger Javier Bardem, is in a wheelchair. He's a very successful person in a wheelchair. He's star player of the Paralympic team, and he's now married to the female protagonist at the start of the film that was in the struggle. And that's the film. Pretty much it tells the story about both how Victor inserts himself back into their lives, how that creates conflict, how that creates questions asked, and how his relationships and how he seeks to resolve and both get revenge on everything that's happened to him beforehand. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I think I give it an old 4.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. And I mean, it's melodramatic. I get it. It's good over the top, but it was really interesting. It kept me going right to the end because there was always something happening and always something you weren't quite sure about. You weren't quite sure whether you liked Victor, whether you disliked. And what I really liked about it is the fact that it just let the characters develop naturally. It didn't force anything on or preempt anything too earlier on to tell you what was going to happen. It just kind of let the story play out and go. Very well shot, very interesting shooting that goes on, and especially in characterization and casting choices, I think, because like Javier Bardem is a very straight or stoic kind of actor. That's the people that he tends to play that I've seen him in, and so it's hard to read emotion on his face sometimes. But Live Flesh I thought was brilliant, and I know it's not considered one of his greatest movies, but I don't know what to tell you. I thought it was amazing. The next film I'm going to talk about is always a bit of a treat. It's a film by Krzysztof Kieślowski, and every time you watch one of his films, you know you're in for a bit of a delight of some sort, and this one is The Double Life of Veronique, this being the artificial eye release, but there is also a Criterion release. And The Double Life of Veronique tells the story of two women that look identical, doppelgangers if you want, both played by the same actress, Anne Jacobs, and one lives in Poland, one lives in France. And the story doesn't try and do too much with that other than tell two sides of how life can go. I think they don't really intertwine, they don't really mix and meet. Only very briefly do they seem to have any overlap in the film, and it shows how one life plays out, and then intertwined with that is the other one. Explores themes like love, romance, ambition, career, all of those things, and kind of leaves it to you. I mean, it's not a Kieślowski movie that hits you up your face. It is not necessarily, I think, trying to tell you a big story. It is not trying to tell you anything about yourself. It just lets you sit and watch and observe what happens to these characters, or this character, if you want to think of them as one. So I have to say, when I was watching it, I found it challenging, because I did think that it should have been trying to tell me something. Somebody that's most recent thing I've watched of Kieślowski has been the Decalogue, and there's always been a point to a lot of those things. I'm trying to work out the point of it. This one doesn't really have it, but somewhere along the way, you do realise that this film is just as beautiful as everything else that man ever made. Some people have called it three colours green, which would make it four colours, because that would be one of the three colours, because there's definitely the green tint to the palette, and Ian Jacobs has been in red, so you know there are definitely some parallels there. But there's something very, very beautiful about the story it's been told, and also how it's acted. I always think the dialogue and the quality of the acting are things that are real hallmarks. I know a lot of people talk about the cinematography of Kieślowski's movies, but the writing and the way that he gets people to act is always something that I find very striking about Kieślowski's work. And what's really interesting is one of the extras that's on this disc anyway is a conversation with Kieślowski, which isn't really a conversation. It's about an hour-long study where he does talk about some bits, but then they show him in the act of the filmmaking. You know, scenes where his actors are acting out, and he's smiling to himself as he admires the quality of their work. He gives them very general pushings and leanings in certain directions. He was insistent of Ian Jacobs that she developed slightly different mannerisms for each character. So the one in France had slightly different mannerisms from the one in Poland, that weren't too overt. You know, one didn't have a twitch or anything, but they just did things slightly differently, or had little quirks about the personality that would maybe show through in multiple viewings, etc. And it was a really, really fascinating watch. That it's nearly more interesting to watch Kieślowski making a movie, considering I just think he's absolutely an incredible filmmaker, than actually to watch one of his movies, because one seems much more rare than the other. There's also an interview with Ian Jacob here, which is great, and then there are a couple of short films, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, which I've still to watch, which is always nice because I always have more stuff. This is one of the most jam-packed artificial eye releases I can find, actually, and one that I had to pick up because of that, because artificial eye releases you can always get for a good price or so. So that's Double Life of Veronique, a film that I was initially challenged on, but one I could watch in a heartbeat, because that film will wash over me, and his films always have real beauty and real deep themes in them. You know, there's nothing that meant to come too easy, I don't think, and honestly truly one of the greatest filmmakers that ever lived. So that's Kieslowski. And then the final movie. Well, I usually save the best for last, and this week is absolutely no exception. This is a film that in the UK only seems to have a DVD release. I can't find a Blu-ray release. In fact, Blu-rays, I don't think there's one in America. I could be wrong. And it is the film So Long, My Son. And it's by director, and I'm going to have to look at this because it's Wang Xiaoshuo. Give it a go. You always give it a go. It's a 2019 film, and it's a bit of an epic. It reminded me very much of something by like Edward Yang, if he had been still making movies today, because it's over 3 hours long, and it tries to tell a point of, or tell the story of China's one-child policy and the effect that it had on people. And rather than telling it from the macro or telling it from the big picture, he focuses on saying what effect did that have on people, on certain individuals. And it tells the story of a husband and wife primarily, and their circle of people around them and how they influenced them, etc. And about their son that they have, Xinjiang. And like, there's no other way to put it. This film is absolutely crushing. Crushing. I seen a great line on one of the adverts or one of the reviews, maybe it was. This is a film that goes and finds your heart as you're watching it and just breaks it multiple times. As the film progresses and more is realised about the film and about the characters and about what happened to them, etc., you'll just feel it every single time. And it's not all sadness. It'll be absolute pure joy. It'll crush you with joy sometimes about how beautiful some of the things are. And this is a really, really special movie, if you ask me. It's very rare that a film will crush me in both ways, as we see what happens, not only the son and the relationships, but their own relationship with each other, because it doesn't tell you everything right at the bat. It does this very interesting thing of cutting back and forward in time and using the cuts to make you think one thing and then shifting it around and doing something else. If you can find this movie, and it was on movie there, go and watch it. It's a special movie. I would seriously consider paying the £25 for the Blu-ray version once to see if it's any good, etc., and if there's English subs on it that are there, because I just do think this is one of the very best films that I have seen all year, especially if you like films that are about family, that are about things that a lot of us can identify with, and then also about the sacrifices that we all make once we become parents. Or I suppose it doesn't have to be parents. As soon as you love somebody or love something enough that you realise that you would give of yourself for that person, if you've experienced that emotion, I think you'll identify with a lot of the stuff that's in this film. So that's my films of the week. There's been a lot of them, sorry, and they haven't been from the regular stream of boutique Blu-ray labels that would normally make a lot of my viewing up, but some of these films were just too interesting not to talk about, and too unusual not to talk about. So if you've seen anything, please let me know, especially if you've seen So Long, My Son. I don't really see too many people having ever mentioned it, which to me seems a crying shame, because it's the kind of movie that I think if you've seen it, you would have something to say about it, even if it was just, oh my god, I'm not getting 3 hours of my life back again. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you've been watching in the comments, and I hope you stay safe and take care of yourselves. All the best. Goodbye.